Morning, Holly.
Good morning. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Holly, start with telling us who you are and what you do, just for people that don't know.
I'm Holly Pretsky. I am city editor at City and State New York. We're a local politics publication.
All right. How long have you been with City and State?
I'm going on 6 years. I started in February of 2020.
Oh, wow, that's a long stint at a news outlet. So,
Yeah,
Holly,
in
let's
the
start.
journalism world, this is a long time to be at
Yeah,
one
yeah. Well, that's
place.
good. That
It's
means, that means
unusual.
it's a good working environment. That's what I attribute that to. But Holly, let's start with let's go to, in your mind, what are the top three events of this week? Obviously, we're 2 days in. And last week, what would you rate are the three biggest news events of the last week?
This has been a really busy week, so I feel like I might even overlook something really huge, but Um, the main thing is we had new indictments kind of surrounding the Adams administration. The Manhattan District Attorney indicted Ingrid Lewis Martin, who is Eric Adams' former chief advisor, on Thursday. Four different indictments, eight co-defendants, including also Jesse Hamilton, who held a high up position in DCAS. Um, so that was really huge. At this point, Eric Adams has been adjacent to a lot of corruption, and there have been several indictments, including one that named him, um, that's since been dropped. But so it's unclear, at this point, will this really impact him any further? Can he fall any further politically? But it was really a damning insight into these allegations of kind of trading money, trading favors for political influence and for expediting certain projects for people. And it's really, it wasn't a very flattering look at how things might have been run in the Adams administration. I should say that Ingrid Lewis Martin pleaded not guilty, and so did all of her co-defendants. And they say this is lawfare and this is a misrepresentation of how things went down. But it's not a great look. So that was huge. I guess, does that count for four things? Four indictments?
What are your thoughts on Winnie Greco? Okay, here's the
Yeah,
reality.
Winnie Greco, of
This is what I
course.
want to, this is the big question. Is this, could you say this is the end of the Adams campaign, or his probability? I mean, he's polling, depending on what poll,
Hmm.
at single digits. Some have him at 11, but he's behind Sliwa. And the only reason that's a huge deal is because, what is it? Seven out of 10 New Yorkers are registered Democrats, and he's the sitting Democratic mayor.
Hmm.
So for you to be polling behind the Republican Curtis Lee was a huge deal in terms of probability, right? But what do you
Yeah.
think this means in terms of the reelection? He still had a respectable fundraising haul, but you could make the argument that that was before this more recent
Hmm.
announcement or indictments by the Manhattan District Attorney. What does this mean in terms of his reelection prospects?
Yeah. Just really quick, you mentioned the Winnie Greco thing, which was this other crazy thing that happened last week where another top Adams ally handed a reporter, Katie Honan from the City, not to be confused with City and State, which is where I work, different news outlet. Really, really great nonprofit news outlet. Really great reporter was handed a potato chip bag full of cash with an envelope full of cash. Bizarre, totally bizarre interaction. There's been a lot of fallout from that too. So that happened, I think, just before the Ingrid Lewis Martin indictments dropped. And as far as Eric Adams' campaign, he was really a long shot prior to these two incidents. I think the fundraising, I would have to look more closely at the dates. I think it might be that he saw a little bit of a spike in fundraising after um, Andrew Cuomo lost the primary so decisively against Zohran Mamdani, and the kind of moderate or business or real estate, all of these interests that were really concerned about Zohran Mamdani. There was a period of a few weeks before we knew for sure that Andrew Cuomo was going to stay in, before we'd seen a, and too much polling about where everyone stood, where it looked like it was going to be maybe an Eric Adams, Zohran Mamdani contest. So I think maybe the fundraising, I would have to double check, but my theory would be that some of the strong fundraising happened during that period. But as the summer has worn on, it definitely seems like Eric Adams' chances are not so great, largely because Andrew Cuomo is staying in and is running as an independent and is polling in second place. And then also he just keeps getting hit. Eric Adams keeps getting hit with these really unflattering news cycles. There was one prior to this, his former police commissioner sued him in a hefty lawsuit alleging just rampant corruption within the NYPD. It wasn't like it didn't make a huge splash, but it's just this like steady thing since I guess we found out November 2023 that the FBI had taken his phones. And since then, it's just kind of been a steady drumbeat of like these allegations of corruption that I think are probably going to prove too serious for him to overcome to get reelected. But I'm really wary about making predictions, as you know. That's why I've been so hesitant to come on the podcast because I just like you never know. Like a lot of people are saying they saw Zohran Mamdani coming now. A lot of people are, talking a big game about how they saw how talented he was. And of course, and it's like, no, you didn't. No one saw this coming. Very few people saw this coming. I mean, in hindsight, it's easy to say, of course, Zohran Mamdani is like this extremely talented person. Of course, when we saw in the debate that there were more viewers of this debate for this primary than ever before, we should have, like, of course, it was going to be this almost landslide for Zohran Mamdani, but it's really hard to make predictions in politics.
I mean, it's not about getting it right. It's also about, it's about taking a shot and seeing who, if you get it, or if you can read the tea leaves or not. But that's
I
fine,
think
Holly.
it is about getting it
Ha,
right. I
ha,
think
ha,
that
ha,
there's a lot
ha.
of like political power, a lot of where people derive their credibility and power in politics, I'm starting to learn is like
Mhm.
forward looking, being the one who is correct, being the one who can really read like where the currents are going, what the voters are going to do, and being the one who can do that the earliest, which makes politics kind of like it's like an oracular, is that a word? Oracular? We're all oracles trying to be. Makes it very
But
forward
Holly,
looking, but I think
and we'll move
again,
on. But I have one question, one thought, right? As a reporter, part of your job is instinctual as well.
is what?
Instinctual. Your job
Mm-hmm.
is partly instinctual. How do you get a story before another reporter? A
Yeah,
lot of it is driven by instincts, and sometimes you're hearing things, you're seeing things, you start to look, you start to ask,
totally.
and some of
And the
it
thing
some of it
about,
is right, some of the tips are right, some of them are
yeah, but the thing
misleading,
also about
but
being
there
like a
is some
politics
guessing,
journalist,
but
like
there
I'm
is
an
some
editor,
guessing.
so I'm more behind the
Mm,
scenes. Our
got it.
reporters, Annie McDonough and Sahaley Donaldson, are our City Hall reporters, and they're really great. The thing about like being a journalist in this ecosystem of people who are always trying to tell the future and trying to be right is that when you make a prediction as a journalist, or when you like try to read you talk to all your sources, you really try to get a sense. And then you put something out that's like, this person, Andrew Cuomo, before the primary, Andrew Cuomo is likely to be elected. He's the favorite. All the polls show that Andrew Cuomo's in the lead. When we do that as journalists, that then itself kind of it shifts the future. Like that has an impact itself. The prediction making itself manifests. So it makes it even more impressive that Zohran Mamdani, against all of that narrative, was able to pull this off. I mean, it really was like everyone was saying the word stunning. It was totally stunning. It was really, I felt like I was witnessing a moment of a big moment in New York City history, this big, stunning upset of this 33-year-old guy who had been in the assembly for just a few years, taking down this huge former governor with millions of dollars of spending and all these like high-powered political veterans behind him. How did you feel?
About the outcome. Well, look, I
Yeah.
lived. I mean, it's not apples to apples, but I witnessed firsthand how former Mayor Bill de Blasio came out of nowhere.
Mm,
There was a series of events, right? Because that's usually,
yeah.
it's not just a vanilla thing, right? But I saw the how it sort of he went from no one thought he would be mayor to mayor, right? And then
Yeah.
again, a series of events happened. It helped, but it was also I'm biased, but it was a well-run campaign. You know,
Yeah.
he read the tea leaves, right? He bet on people. Remember, Ray Kelly was extremely popular at the beginning, and then De Blasio said, "No, I'm going to, remove him, and I'm going to reform stop and frisk." He said a lot of things. Universal pre-K. He understood that
Yeah.
child care was important, and it
Yeah.
was, on policing and universal pre-K, paid sick leave, the
Yeah.
municipal ID.
As a
He made
person who
a lot.
is close with de Blasio and really knows a lot about how de Blasio governed, what would be your advice? Because it seems like Mamdani's really studying de Blasio closely. And it seems like he's also studying Brandon Johnson as kind of like
The other
someone
thing
he
Bill
doesn't want to
did,
emulate.
the other thing Bill did that I think again is some similarities that I witnessed firsthand was that he didn't do mail. De Blasio did was people don't credit him with doing
Mm,
digital early on. He had a person on the team, Jessica Singleton, who was brilliant in terms of the digital. So
mm,
he didn't do mail. People forget.
yeah.
He did mail at the end in Staten Island because he thought he could beat Loda there, and he just had it, was sitting a lot out of money and just did it. But he was a lot of the campaign was there were they and again certain things happened that also helped, right? So it's a combination
Yeah,
of the
there's
two.
always those like unpredictable
So
factors.
I see some similarities in how Zohran again captured the social media, the sort of the videos were very. I remember watching myself the polar bear,
The
and I
polar
said, wow,
bear
that's pretty. No, that's really
plunge.
good. No, it's very clever,
Yeah. And
and
the
the
one where
things
he
he
interviewed
did.
Trump voters, a lot of people are talking about
Yeah,
that
and the
one
Knicks
now.
and going and involved with the Knicks and how the energy around the Knicks and being there on site and some of those
Hmm.
interviews. I thought the one in the deli was very good when he
Yeah.
wrote about his small
One
business
thing
plan
about
because
him that,
that's the outer borough New Yorker, right? They buy their
yeah,
sandwiches in delis still.
I think one thing about his campaign that's impressive, again, hindsight's 2020, but it seemed you go back and you watch that first video that he made to launch his campaign, which by the way, Peter Stern at City and State broke the story that Zohran Mamdani was running for mayor.
Yes, he
Um,
did.
which is great. But if you go back to that first video when he officially launched, his message and his like way of carrying himself, it's pretty consistent, which I think is
Mhm.
very like he knew and his campaign people knew from the launch what their vision was, and they were able to stick with it throughout.
Mhm.
I think some of the other candidates, you saw them launching in a certain way and then migrating on certain issues or trying to present themselves kind of differently or seeing what other candidates were doing and then reacting. I feel like Mamdani was so consistent from start to finish, and he really allowed, he stayed in his lane and he allowed it to kind of build on itself rather than like looking around and seeing what his
And
competition were doing and reacting to that, being knee jerk.
And de
I guess
Blasio did
Cuomo
the
was,
same thing. De Blasio
yeah,
said, I'm going to raise taxes on those making upwards of $500,000. UPK, reform, stop and frisk,
yeah,
Tale of Two Cities. He just even when he was at the very single digits, he did not change the messaging. He was
mm,
consistent with what he was going to do and how he was going to do it,
yeah.
regardless of where he was in the polls. And he just hammered away on it. And
So when did you join de Blasio? Were you part of the campaign or part of the transition, or did you just join as administration after?
public advocate. And wait
Oh,
a
so you
minute, but
were,
this is turning into you interviewing me, huh? Wait.
But you just
But
have
I
been
think we're
doing
getting
this
away.
longer.
We're getting
You know
away.
more than like it's.
We're moving in the wrong direction here. I want to ask you now a question because I think you're being a little gun shy. I hear me with what you know. What do you think of the sort of pivot now that we're analyzing campaigns? What do you think of the pivot in terms of the Cuomo campaign? He's now taking a
Post.
different approach, meaning I'm going to do more retail. I'm going to be
Hmm.
aggressive on social media. I'm going to do trolling, right? Or, you know what I mean? He's going
Hmm.
to call him out on certain things. And what do you think of that approach? Because the other thing I find interesting is, for better or worse, with former Governor Cuomo, there's I've never not read a story as it pertains to former Governor Cuomo where you don't hear, you know, built the Second Avenue line, built LaGuardia Airport, built
Hmm.
the Kosciuszko Bridge, the Tampa Sea Bridge, the Mario Cuomo Bridge, and lastly, known as a bully, right? It's like it's always at the end.
Hmm.
It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, he accomplished all these things with this really aggressive bare knuckle style. And the question that always the question I always ask myself is it that approach of trolling, of being super aggressive, of pushing back, punching back? Is it more of the same? And it's sort of perpetuating the the sort of negative stereotypes people have about the former governor, where it sort of always ends there. Like I read
Mm.
the more recent Times article about, his father's lost
That was
to
such a
Koch.
good article.
His father, yeah, his father's lost to Koch, and now, right, and
Yeah.
there's sort of this redemptive,
Hmm.
feeling in Andrew, but it's sort of always. So I don't know. Now I want to hear what you think in terms of his new approach.
Yeah.
And what are your thoughts? Do you get a feeling of more of the same, or do you think it's I don't know. What do you think?
Gonna change things. Yeah, that article that you talked about in the New York Times about his dad losing to Koch in the primary and then staying in the general and the parallels, I think it was 1977, was so interesting. And just seeing those pictures of Andrew Cuomo at 19 and what he looked like and how he was so aggressive then, even like running his dad's campaign. And he's accused of doing that homophobic attack ad again, or these flyers, these homophobic flyers showed up about Ed Koch, who was closeted or who was not out at the time. And that's kind of attributed to him. So yeah, I would recommend anyone read that article because it was really good. As far as Cuomo's pivot in the general, I think he's trying to be out and about more, but at the same, so that's kind of the narrative, like, oh, Cuomo's going to be on social media more and he's going to be out and about shaking hands with people more. However, at the same time, he's kind of started doing these press conferences that are echoing his COVID press conferences. So he has a hotel, he like, rents a hotel banquet room and he gets up on a dais. Behind him, he has the New York flag and the American flag, and he has a PowerPoint. So it's like he's kind of that to me feels like he's he's face to face with the press. So we're seeing him more, I guess, which is different from the primary, but it also feels like a little bit more of a step into this official, he's like appealing to his official government self. And as far as like getting out and about in the city, yes, he this weekend was um visiting NYCHA, a few different NYCHA complexes around the city, but I think the weekend before, he's been spending a lot of time in the Hamptons too. So he's been still somewhat distant in those two ways. Whether it'll be more effective, I don't know. I think after he lost the primary so decisively, it seems like there was this, like someone kind of gave him a pep talk of like, you're Andrew Cuomo, you're the former governor. Like all you have to do is just remember who you are. And it seems like that's kind of the attitude now. He said a few times, like, oh, during the primary, I was told I was too, I was being too aggressive. That's usually the criticism, as you were saying, like that he's a bully, he's too aggressive. So during the primary, I tried to be different, and I realize now that was a mistake. Um, and he really did come in, especially when in the couple weeks that Mamdani was, on pause because he went to Uganda to celebrate his wedding. Cuomo was really hitting him in a new way that felt like kind of going negative on Mamdani in a way that Mamdani had not had to deal with in the primary because you know, no one was really, I mean, there was the WFP slate, so there was kind of like a no, they had agreed not to go negative on each other. And then Cuomo didn't take Mamdani seriously enough to go really negative on him in the primary. So we were starting to see that. And that did kind of feel like a tone shift for a little bit, but not so much anymore at this point. I just don't know. Like the things that they're trying to hit Mamdani on, I don't know that they're sticking. Like they tried to hit him on the rent stabilized thing. They tried to hit him on prostitution, on like previously wanting to decriminalize prostitution. And I just don't know if these things are like
Yeah, it's bordering
sticking.
some, and they try to hit him on how much he bench presses, which is, I think, is bizarre.
That was more Eric
That's like
Adams. That was
really, that's like really. Lord.
that's
I was like, my,
masculinity coming
yeah,
into
I don't know,
play.
but that's like, if that's,
Like that's a thing they tried to hit De Blasio. I feel like there was all this stuff about De Blasio not being like macho enough too, and that doesn't really. I'm not sure that that's what we want in our mayors. If you look at all our different mayors, a lot of them weren't weightlifters.
but I mean, well, what do you make of that? I think that's bordering on like,
That was weird. I mean, I
bordering on
didn't like.
desperation, in all
Yeah,
fairness, I'm not like, Zohran Mamdani played soccer at Bronx High School, it's like, he's an athlete, I mean,
yeah, like
but whatever,
when
I
it
just
becomes
find it
like a
like,
physical yeah, it's kind of strange. Yeah, that was more the mayor. But the mayor's very into that. Like Eric Adams, he was doing pull-ups the other week too when he was at a press conference about like the Citizen app. He was doing pull-ups on a like I don't know what it's like a traffic light. And he's very into fitness and he wrote a cookbook about, staying healthy. So I guess that's part of his brand. And maybe that's, he has his smoothies and he takes his meetings, I guess, from his treadmill. So maybe that's just Eric Adams continuing to do that. But yeah, the side by side comparison of them each doing bench presses was odd. And it's
yeah,
kind of interesting. I mean,
I just think more around, it's almost November, like, if that's what we're focusing on when you're,
yeah, I think Eric Adams has expressed a lot of frustration about feeling like his accomplishments are under recognized
yeah,
because
the other thing I think ultimately, I mean, even from that perspective is, was it the, I'm forgetting what they called it, the treasure hunt, was it?
scavenger
Was it
hunt.
scavenger hunt?
Yeah.
And in a sort of eclipse in terms of the mobilization and the volunteers, and and again, it's also what I find interesting, going back to what you're saying about messaging and the consistency of messaging, is that
Hmm.
everyone is reacting to tangible actions that he's taking, which automatically hurts you, right? Meaning, if you're, it's like when you ignore someone, and especially in business, this passive aggressive ignoring, going back to Cuomo not thinking he was formidable and not acknowledging him, to sort of responding to everything, it sort of shows that you're flat-footed, meaning you're being reactive and you don't really have a
Hmm.
sort of
Right.
message, right? Where you're attacking whether he can bench press or not, or
Hmm.
whether a scavenger hunt is newsworthy, when the reality is he mobilized way more people than I was like, well, oh Lord. I was like, this
I
is
know
a
it's a little freaky. It's like, okay, are we gonna have a
it's
problem with this huge of a
it is
crowd?
impressive. And the reason it's newsworthy is he's turning out thousands and thousands of people.
Yeah.
And people are more interested in that than whether he can bench press 2 plates or 220. I don't know what that means, but
Yeah.
Imitation is that's the other thing you realize too, is that imitation is the highest form of flattery.
Hmm.
Everyone is now pivoting to his social media approach,
And I
similar to
do think,
Bill.
just
No
shout
matter
out
how
to
much people
Chiose, who's
attack
a city
him,
council member who is doing videos really, really well, and
yes,
I think
correct,
was the
correct. Yes,
deserves a lot of
yes,
credit for
that
pioneering
is
this
fair,
like
and that is
new
fair, and
influencer strategy.
but that is fair and accurate. But irregardless of how you feel about the mayoralty of the previous mayor, yeah, everyone talks about childcare. Everyone talks about
Hmm.
pre-K. Everyone now, right? Everyone's platform includes some semblance of allowing parents to go back to work, allowing parents, the kid gets into school, the child gets into school earlier, the likelihood of success increases, but it is part of the everyone's campaign platform. Um, you know,
Yeah,
you know,
everyone
you
wants to
yeah,
expand childcare.
yeah, affordability. So for better or worse, he has run a transformational campaign, and I say that the attacks are more sort of a segment of at this point. It's beginning to look like desperation, but to your point, anything can happen. There's still a
Yeah.
whole lot of time left on the clock, and who knows, right? Who knows
And I
how
think
things will
Eric
play out.
Adams, the thing that Eric Adams has that I don't think many candidates have these days is I think that Eric Adams thinks that God wants Eric Adams to be mayor. Like Eric Adams has this really strong faith and this like inner sense. It's almost like a vocational thing. Like he feels called deep in his soul. And I think that's why he didn't resign, like why he has withstood all of this turmoil and all this pressure that might have forced, another politician to resign because he has this like inner thing about God wanting him to be mayor. So
Let me ask
really,
you that.
I mean, he has at least that going for him.
Let me ask you this because I want to wrap this up because I know you have other things to do. What would you say was if Eric Adams, Mayor Adams is a one-term mayor, what would you say was the thing that the straw that broke the camel's back? One thing that sort of set was the
His downfall. I think it's not that creative of an answer, but I think it was just loyalty to his longtime friends and associates at the expense of seriously governing. So I think he just surrounded himself with people he really trusted, who he had known for a long time, rather than saying, now I'm mayor, I need to prioritize people's experience. I need to hire people who, you know, have a track record of actually running a city. And I think that's his downfall is that he stayed loyal to people like Tim Pearson and Ingrid Lewis Martin rather than kind of having that, valuing them as his friends, but not giving them the keys to the city, power to run the city. I think that was his biggest mistake. And then I think this has been said a lot too, but I think his relationship to the press has become it's gotten to a point of being almost irreparable, it seems. Like there's just no trust, there's not respect. Um, and that I think a lot of people see that as preventable, that he could have his press strategy and his way of dealing with the press could have been handled much differently. What do you think is his downfall?
I think you delineated pretty much what what it was. I mean, I just think the other thing I would add was just the approach to the city council. It is your co-branch.
Yes, good
There
point.
were things where there is a middle ground, somewhere. Not in a, not sometimes there isn't point of sort of agreement because again, policing and say public safety, right? He had a more moderate, but there were other areas where there are places where he just dug in, and which was made. People have different strategies, and then we know, right? The voters decide whether your strategy was good or not in November.
Yeah,
So we'll know soon enough.
yeah.
Um,
But I
but
think it's
I
just
want to.
hard to be mayor, like
Yeah. No,
I've
it
heard
is.
this
It is.
about
It is. It is
Mamdani. He's going to
extremely
come in.
difficult.
People are talking about likely he's going to be the next mayor, and it's not a matter of if, but when you have like a massive challenge that just
Yeah.
completely rocks the boat and makes it so hard for you to accomplish your agenda. I'm sure you saw that with de Blasio too. Like it's just a really, really hard
Yeah, and then you
job.
have unforeseeable circumstances like COVID, migrants, things that just come out of nowhere.
Yeah.
I have one thing that I almost forgot to ask you. City Council Speaker.
Hmm.
The real race begins in November once, we find out who the next mayor is going to be. But what are you hearing post primary? Because I know
Hmm.
you've written about it. Um, I saw somewhere that it's becoming, according to this reporter, and please help me here, that it's becoming a two-woman race between Hudson and Menon.
Was that
But
Craig? I think that was New York Post.
yeah, it may be. I'm sorry. Right now, it's not coming to me. But my question is, what are you hearing? And right now, uh, what are your thoughts on the current state of play?
Yeah, the speaker race is so fascinating. I think it really ties together all of the different players and interests in New York City politics. It's not decided by the voters, it's decided by the council members. 51 members, you need 26 votes. But then all these members are beholden to all these different interests, labor, county organizations, advocacy groups, Congress members. So it's just this like huge, messy, tangly conversation with the whole city that I think is so fascinating. Um, this race, it does seem to be, I mean, the two names you hear most often are Julie Menon, Upper East Side council member who formerly worked on the census, and Crystal Hudson, Brooklyn council member, who's been pretty prolific and won her seat with support from Hakeem Jeffries. I'm not sure like how much they talk now or how close they are now. But other names are Amanda Farias, the majority leader, Carmen De La Rosa, who did support Mamdani. I don't know if she officially endorsed him, but she was out and about with Mamdani pre-primary, which I think means something these days. She said she's running, and then Chris Marte is making calls, which is interesting too. And then there have been a few other names in the mix, like Kevin Riley, Sylvina Brooks Powers. They have been mentioned, previously. But as you said, it's still early. And last time around, when the city council chose Adrienne Adams, like she at August in August of 2021, I don't know that Adrienne Adams was really on people's radar as the likely next speaker. Just to say that things can really
Yeah, for sure.
change, but um, yeah, certainly Menon and Hudson are both campaigning, actively campaigning. And a big question is, assuming Mamdani does become mayor-elect, will he get involved or not? Um, de Blasio really helped choose Melissa Mark Viverito, who obviously did a lot of work herself too, but he got really involved, got a progressive speaker in there. Eric Adams for his first term. Eric Adams sort of got involved, but then was kind of wishy-washy about it, I guess. I guess he didn't really commit to someone, and he was kind of behind Francisco Moya, but it kind of backfired, and that whole race was a little bit more messy, and we ended up with Adrienne Adams, who people expected to be aligned with Eric Adams because they're from the same part of the city and they're both kind of moderate. But she actually turned out to be, a huge check on the mayor. As you said, like they've had a lot of conflict and they've been on the opposite side of a lot of issues. So definitely interesting. to it's definitely a really interesting political race to watch, kind of like in the background of the mayor's race, which is so attention grabbing and vivid.
Holly, we're gonna wrap with who do you think in your field? Name 3 reporters you look up to. Maybe that's a
Jeff
bad choice of
Colton.
words, but people that you say, you know, they're sort of the standard, or people that whose work you respect and think they get it right most of the time in terms of your line of work.
Yeah, Jeff Colton is a former city and stater, now at Politico, does great work. I read him very closely. Katie Honan, who we already talked about, at the city, also a really great City Hall reporter. And I guess I'll just shout out New York Focus as an organization, as an outlet. I think they really identified a need, and they're really young, and they, founded this upstart nonprofit outlet, and they're doing really great work. And then I love the Craig Newmark School of Journalism at CUNY, and they put out it's a great journalism school, and their students are really well trained and really great journalists, and they come out of there. We have a lot of interns from there, so shout out to the faculty of CUNY Day School.
Best day on the job.
I don't know. I guess it's nice to just like work on a cover story and then publish it and feel like proud of it.
I
So
thought the Jeff Colton story on Ingrid was very, I mean, when you think about how things have played out,
yeah,
that was a great story.
yeah,
Now,
that was an awesome profile.
3 most influential books you ever read, and then we'll wrap.
Most influential book. The Age of Surveillance Capitalism by Shoshana Zuboff is a book about how social media companies have monetized our data and are surveilling us in a way that is limiting actually our freedom to make our own choices, and is like fundamentally changing human experience. That was a huge book. Right now I'm reading Gods of New York by Jonathan Mahler, which is about New York City from 1986 to 1990. And it's really, really good. I'm not done with it yet, but I'm really enjoying it. Lots of the same characters that we're still talking about: Curtis Lee with Donald Trump, Al Sharpton, like all these people who have been around since then. And it's just really great to learn that context about them. And then I just read Demon Copperhead, which is by Barbara Kingsolver, story based on David Copperfield, about a kid growing up in Appalachia, and it's about the opioid crisis and about like rights to land and independence and rural urban divide. And it definitely changed my life. Very, very good book.
Well, yeah, Mahler, did you read Ladies and Gentlemen, The Bronx is Burning?
No, I haven't yet.
That's
Need
very
to.
good. You should. It's a very
Embarrassed
good
to
book.
say.
It's all right. You'll get there. Thank you, Holly, for doing this. I know it took a while, but it wasn't too bad.
It was great. Thanks for
I
having
felt like
me.
I was getting cross-examined here. The
Well, you
tables
have
were
a lot of
turned.
knowledge to share.
You know, the tables were turned, but it was all in good fun, and hopefully we'll do this again soon, and more to come. Thank you so much, Holly. All the best.
Thank you. Talk to you later.